I didn't let my miracle baby niece be my flower girl at my wedding. My sister Emma had been trying to have kids for like 8 years. 8 freaking years of fertility treatments, miscarriages, the whole nightmare. When she finally had little Zoe last year, everyone called her the miracle baby. And honestly, she really was. So when I got engaged to my fiance, Jake, in February, Emma immediately started hinting about Zoe being our flower girl. The baby was only 6 months old at the time, but Emma kept saying stuff like, "Oh, she'll be walking by your wedding in October, and imagine how cute she'll look throwing petals." I just smiled and nodded because honestly, I wasn't even thinking about flower girls yet. But as the wedding got closer, Emma became obsessed with this idea. She'd send me videos of baby flower girls on Instagram, show me tiny white dresses she found online, the whole thing. Meanwhile, I'm over here stressed about catering and venues and wondering if we can even afford this wedding. Jake and I were paying for everything ourselves since both our parents said they couldn't help much. Here's the thing, nobody understood. Zoe wasn't walking yet, like at all. She was barely sitting up on her own at 10 months old. The pediatrician said some babies just take longer and not to worry. But Emma was convinced she'd be toddling down that aisle by October. She kept saying, "Babies develop so fast, and she'll surprise everyone." 2 weeks before the wedding, I gently brought up maybe having my friend's daughter, Becca, as the flower girl instead. Becca was 4, super well behaved, and had actually asked if she could be in our wedding, but Emma completely lost it. I'm talking full meltdown in the middle of Target while we were picking up last-minute decorations. "You're discriminating against my baby because she's not walking yet," she sobbed right there in the home goods aisle. This is supposed to be her moment to shine. She's been through so much already, which was insane because Zoe hadn't been through anything. Emma had been through stuff, sure, but the baby was perfectly healthy and happy. I tried explaining that I just wanted everything to go smoothly. And having a baby who couldn't walk meant Emma would have to carry her down the aisle, which would make her part of the ceremony too. Emma said that was fine. She'd wear a nice dress and walk with Zoe, but that's not what I wanted for my wedding. I wanted my sister sitting in the front row with my parents, not being part of the actual ceremony. The whole family got involved. My mom called me crying, saying I was being selfish and that Emma deserved this after everything she'd been through. My dad texted me some long message about family being more important than perfect wedding photos. Even my grandmother, who usually stays out of drama, left me a voicemail saying I should reconsider. But here's what really bothered me. Nobody asked what I actually wanted for my own wedding. It was all about Emma's feelings and Emma's miracle baby and what Emma thought would be cute. When I mentioned that Jake and I had talked about having a child-free ceremony anyway, Emma said that was heartless and you'll regret not having Zoe in your photos forever. The final straw came 1 week before the wedding. Emma showed up to the rehearsal dinner venue while Jake and I were doing our walkthrough with the coordinator. She had Zoe with her and started practicing walking down the aisle, holding the baby and throwing fake petals. The wedding coordinator looked at me confused because obviously I hadn't mentioned a baby flower girl who couldn't walk. "I thought we could just do a quick practice run," Emma said, completely ignoring the fact that I'd never actually agreed to any of this. Zoe started crying because she was tired, and Emma kept trying to make her hold these silk petals while walking down the aisle. It was chaos. That's when I finally put my foot down. I told Emma that Zoe wasn't going to be our flower girl, period. We were having Becca do it like I'd originally planned. Emma started crying again and said I was ruining her dreams and that Zoe would never forgive me when she grew up, which is ridiculous because Zoe is a baby who won't even remember any of this. Emma didn't talk to me for the rest of the week. She showed up to the wedding with this attitude like she was doing me some huge favor by even being there. During the ceremony, when little Becca walked down the aisle perfectly sprinkling rose petals and being adorable, Emma sat in the front row holding Zoe and looking miserable. But you know what? My wedding was exactly what Jake and I wanted. It was smooth, beautiful, and stress-free. When Emma finally had Zoe, it felt like the whole family breathed a sigh of relief. After years of fertility heartbreak, Zoe's arrival was treated like a miracle handed down from the heavens. Everyone adored her, and I did too. But when Jake and I started planning our wedding, somehow it stopped being about us and turned into Emma's victory lap. She wanted Zoe front and center even though Zoe was still a baby. At first, I didn't have the energy to argue. Wedding planning was draining every ounce of my patience. Budget meetings, chasing vendors, finalizing a guest list that felt like a minefield. So when Emma dropped hints about Zoe being our flower girl, I smiled and let it pass. But the hints turned into daily reminders. And by the time we hit 2 weeks before the wedding, Emma wasn't hinting anymore. She was demanding. The problem was simple. Zoe couldn't even walk. She was adorable, yes, but still wobbly, barely sitting up on her own. Emma kept insisting she'd magically walk in time, like Zoe was going to pull off some miracle sprint down the aisle. It wasn't realistic, and I wasn't willing to risk my ceremony turning into a sideshow. I wanted grace, calm, and order, not a crying baby being carried while my sister threw petals. But when I suggested Becca, my friend's sweet 4-year-old Emma acted like I had slapped her across the face. She sobbed in the middle of Target, accusing me of discriminating against her child, as if my wedding was supposed to be Zoe's redemption story. Suddenly, the entire family piled on. My mom begged, my dad guilt-tripped. Even my grandmother, who rarely got involved, called to say Emma deserved this moment. Everyone was so focused on Emma's struggle that they forgot whose day this was supposed to be. Mine and Jake's. The final straw was rehearsal night. Emma stormed in with Zoe, staging her own practice run without asking. She carried Zoe, tried to toss petals, and looked at me like I should just accept it. But when Zoe started wailing and the coordinator shot me a look of panic, I snapped. I told Emma point blank that Zoe would not be the flower girl. Not now, not ever. Becca was doing it. End of discussion, Emma cried, claimed I was heartless, and spent the wedding sulking in the front row, clutching Zoe like a martyr. But when Becca walked down the aisle sprinkling petals with the biggest smile, it was perfect. For once, the spotlight wasn't on Emma's drama. It was on me and Jake, exactly where it belonged. And in that moment, I realized something harsh. People will try to hijack your joy for their own stories. But if you don't fight for what you want, your own memories will belong to someone else. Story. My dad yelled, "All you do is take. You've never given this family anything." Then told me to leave if I had any pride left. So I did quietly. A month later, my sister called in tears. Why did the tuition payment stop? I just texted back. Thought I never gave this family anything. Then I watched them all fall apart without me. Chapter 1. The blow that broke me. The night air in our backyard felt heavier than usual. Smoke from the grill curled lazily into the sky as my father stood tall, beer in hand, the king of his castle. My mother busied herself with salads. My sister and cousins laughed, and I sat quietly at the picnic table, balancing a paper plate of food I'd helped buy. Food they never thanked me for. I'd grown used to the little digs over the years. You're too soft. You'll never make it on your own. You should be grateful we keep you around. But that night, my father's voice cut through the chatter with a cruelty that stunned even me. All you do is take, he shouted suddenly, his face flushed. You've never given this family anything. The laughter stopped for half a second, and then to my horror. My sister giggled as if his venom was a joke. My mother looked away. No one defended me. I swallowed hard, my chest tight, my throat aching. I wanted to argue, to list every rent payment I'd covered, every loan I'd quietly given, every tuition bill I'd been paying behind the scenes so my sister could stay in school. But I didn't. Instead, I stared at him, my voice low. If that's what you think, then maybe I shouldn't be here. His reply came fast, cruel, and final. Then leave. If you've got any pride left, just leave. And so I did. That night, after the laughter returned to their game of cards, I slipped inside, packed one duffel bag, grabbed the documents and bank accounts they never knew about, and walked out into the dark. I didn't slam the door, I didn't cry, I just left. And while they believed I was nothing without them, they were about to learn a harsher truth. They were nothing without me. Chapter 2. The Quiet Exit. The house was silent when I slipped out, only the hum of the refrigerator following me to the door. My father's words still echoed in my ears. All you do is take, but instead of breaking me, they hardened me. I drove through the night, the duffel bag on the passenger seat holding nothing but essentials. Clothes, documents, the bank cards linked to accounts no one else knew existed. Accounts funded by years of discipline, careful saving, and the side jobs I'd worked while they dismissed me as lazy. By sunrise, I was in a small apartment 2 towns away. No family photos, no familiar voices, just bare walls, a bed, and peace. I changed my number, closed every joint account, blocked them on social media. It was like pulling the plug on a life support machine. For weeks, I lived in quiet. My days were simple: work, eat, sleep. My evenings were filled with small victories. Setting up my own place, building my savings further, reconnecting with old friends who remembered me without the shadow of my father's contempt. But silence wasn't just healing me. It was beginning to wound them. Chapter 3, The First Cracks. At first, I ignored the buzzing of my old phone until I checked the call log out of curiosity. Missed calls stacked like dominoes. Dad, Mom, my sister, even cousins. The voicemails told a story. Where are you? You can't just run off like this. Stop being childish. Come home and eventually fine. If you want to leave, don't expect us to come crawling back. But the tone shifted after a month because quietly, without fanfare, the tuition payments I'd been making for my sister stopped. The credit card bill I'd been covering for my mother went unpaid. The mystery deposits that had always arrived in my father's business account gone. They hadn't even realized until then that I had been the glue. And now that glue was gone, the cracks were spreading. Chapter 4, The Tuition Call. It was late evening when my new phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, but something in my gut told me to answer. Hello? There was silence first, then a shaky, familiar voice. It was my sister. Why? Why did the tuition payment stop? She whispered, and then her words broke into sobs. The school called. They said I can't register for classes next semester unless the balance is paid. Dad said you were handling it. You always handled it. Her words struck deep. For years, I had been quietly covering the bills so she could pursue her degree. Never asking for thanks, never seeking recognition. I thought I was protecting her from the chaos of our parents' financial mess. And yet here she was reduced to tears. Not because of the debt, but because the truth had finally surfaced. The brother they all dismissed as a burden was the one holding her future together. I let her cry. I let the silence stretch. Then I said the only words that mattered. Thought I never gave this family anything. There was no response. Just a sharp inhale, a choked sob, and then the line went dead. Chapter 5. The Domino Effect. That single call was the stone that sent ripples across the entire pond. Within days, my father's business was in trouble. The monthly mystery deposits I had been funneling into his account had kept the lights on longer than he realized. Now creditors were circling. His calls grew more frequent, angrier, until they turned into voicemails filled with accusations. My mother was humiliated when the credit card she flaunted at lunch with friends was declined. She blamed the bank, blamed the system, blamed everyone but herself. And my sister, she withdrew from school. The shame of explaining why that her family couldn't pay cut deeper than she ever imagined. One by one, they felt the collapse. The cracks I had once plastered over with my silence had become canyons without me. And none of them could claim ignorance anymore. Because in my absence, they learned the truth. I had never been the burden. I had been the backbone. Chapter 6, The Funeral of Pride. It happened on a Sunday. A relative I barely kept in touch with had convinced me to attend a community gathering. I almost didn't go, but curiosity won. When I arrived, I noticed the stairs first. People whispering, nodding toward the front where my family sat, or rather where they slumped. My father looked smaller than I remembered. His once broad shoulders sagged, his expensive watch long gone, replaced by cheap leather. My mother's hair was unkempt, her makeup smeared as though she had cried before arriving. And my sister, the once bright girl I had quietly carried through college, sat hollow-eyed, her future clipped by debts she couldn't pay. As I turned to leave, thinking I had seen enough, my father spotted me. He stood, his voice louder than the hushed room around him. "Son," he called out. "Please talk to me." All eyes turned. "You've made your point," he stammered, his hands shaking. "I know I said things I shouldn't have, but we need you. Without you, everything's falling apart. Please come back. Help us, save us." The silence was suffocating. Dozens of faces watched, waiting for me to fold, to forgive. I stepped closer, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut. "You once told me, all I do is take that. I've never given this family anything." I let the words hang, watching his face pale. "Well, now you know what I really gave. And what happens when I stop?" Gasps rippled across the room. My sister's lips trembled. My mother clutched her chest and my father sank back into his seat, his pride crumbling in front of everyone. I straightened my jacket, turned toward the door, and said the last words they'd ever hear from me. "I already gave you everything, but respect that was yours to give, and you never did. So now you can keep your pride in your ruin." And with that, I walked out. Chapter 7, The Final Cut. Months passed. I never reached out, But the echoes of that day, my father begging, my words cutting through the silence, spread far beyond the walls of that community gathering. Their downfall, the cracks widened into collapse. My father, once a man of pride, was now avoided at every turn. Former friends no longer shook his hand. Creditors him. His voice, once booming with authority, was reduced to excuses whispered in shame. My mother, who always looked down her nose at me, was now seen bargaining at discount stores, her reputation for grace shredded by gossip. My sister, once the darling of the family, had dropped out of school, drowning in debt. The same people who clapped when she mocked me at dinners now crossed the street to avoid her desperation. They had built their lives on me without ever realizing it. And when I pulled away, the scaffolding crumbled, leaving nothing but rubble. My rise. Meanwhile, I thrived. The consulting work I once balanced quietly had grown into a small firm. My clients respected me. My income soared. For the first time in years, I slept without resentment, gnawing at my chest. And I had more than money. I had peace. Real friends, chosen family, and a life that was mine. Not one dictated by guilt or obligation, the inevitable plea. One evening, I opened my phone to a message from an unfamiliar number. It read, "We're sorry. Please come home. We need you." I didn't reply because the truth was simple. They had mistaken my love for weakness, my support for servitude, and my silence for irrelevance. Now they finally knew. Chapter 8, Epilogue, Legacy of Silence. A year after I walked away, I found myself sitting in a quiet cafe, sunlight streaming through the windows, a fresh cup of coffee warming my hands. On the newsstand by the counter, a local paper carried a small headline. Community leader defaults on loan amid financial scandal. The face below the headline was familiar. My father's. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply turned the page. My peace versus their regret. My phone buzzed with messages from clients, friends, and a small circle of people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Built by my own hands, on my own terms. Meanwhile, I knew my family still whispered my name, not in pride or love, but in regret. They had mocked me for never giving anything. Now stripped of the quiet sacrifices I once made, they understood the truth. I had given everything. And when I stopped, the house of cards fell. The final lesson. As I left the cafe, I passed a father and daughter walking together. She tugged his sleeve, asking for ice cream, and he laughed as he agreed. I realized then that love, real love, isn't measured by what you demand, but by what you give freely and what you protect. My family never understood that, and now it was too late for them. I walked into the sunlight, lighter than I had ever been, because silence had been my revenge and peace was my victory. Was this revenge perfectly justified? Or should the storm have raged harder? Drop your verdict below. I read every single one. Hit like if you crave justice and share this story with someone who needs its fire. Subscribe to Revenge Exposed, because here betrayals don't sleep. They hunt their owners. Every shadow hides a reckoning, every mask breaks, and every betrayal is answered. Stay sharp, stay unbroken, stay tuned.